footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals and AFL review of round three. And as we've kind of discussed before, unfortunately, Ross is no longer going to be a consistent member of the podcast. So I got to find myself some co hosts. And this year I met a lovely, lovely lady in Melbourne, one of the biggest North Melbourne fans I have ever met in my life, one of my favorite chats. She was very kind to join me, so I have to introduce her, Miss Marnie Cohen. Marnie, thank you for joining me.
Donnie, I love our chats. I am so honored to be here, as always. Thank you for having me.
You're a massive North fan. We're going to talk a little bit more than North today, but we'll have a lot of fun doing it. So let's join right into it. I know you went to the North game, but let's go all 9 games. Thoughts on round three? Because I don't know about you, but I tipped 3 of 9 in this tipping. This is just a mental round of footy.
So it's funny, right? I actually don't do tipping anymore. I did it for a brief period of time, but my biggest falling point is that I can never tip against North because I always believe they're a chance, even if they're no chance at all. So,
Mhm.
North have won for the past 2 or 3 seasons. We haven't won more than 3 games in a year. So I just gave tipping up when North's form just went down the
Mhm.
drain. But I have seen a lot around that people's tips are just being completely thrown for the third week in a row. I actually found this week, I don't know about you, but I found the games this week and the results and sort of the actual games themselves quite underwhelming. I feel like the first 2 rounds have actually had quite a lot of exciting games, close finishes, real high quality football. Whereas I feel like this week probably just didn't really live up to the start of the season from my perspective. Anyway, I felt like there was a lot of real ordinary games floating around. Maybe, a lot of teams have started really hot at the start of the season, and now we're starting to, the season sort of kicking off. We've had a few weeks to get into it, and I just don't feel like this round was as there were a couple of really good games in there, but I just don't feel like overall the games were as good as we've seen the past couple of weeks. That's sort of my take on it. I don't know if you're the same.
I won't disagree with you. I was like, as you were saying that, I pulled the AFL Live app and I was like, look this up because she's got a good point if you think about it. And only 3 teams scored 100 points. So you have a really, really good point there. Let's kind of go off this. I love this vibe, and we would kind of discuss this. So I'm gonna kind of take the lead for a lot of this, but I know I'm gonna let you have your way when it comes to North because I'm very interested on your thoughts on that. So we'll start with it. Thursday night footy. Western Bulldogs get a shock win. Again, I think a lot of people kind of saw the Dougie's performances in the first 2 rounds and kind of went, "Oh, what's wrong with the Dogs?" And Brisbane Lions come down to Marvel Stadium and get beat by 14 as the Duggies bounce back. Jamaro Ugle-Hagan goes bonkers and kicks a bag of 5. I mean, I was fascinated by this game because I was literally sitting here going, Brisbane have become Jekyll and Hyde. They have that great game against Melbourne, but absolutely 2 horrible games previous to in round one and now in round three. I mean, thoughts on this, Marty? I mean, the Duggies. This is just both of these teams. I don't know what to think of these two.
I think with the Dogs, I think they were always going to win. It maybe didn't come. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know if people necessarily thought it would come on Thursday night, but I feel like they were due for a win. I don't feel like they're a side that really is going to stay down for too long. Do I think they'll finish in the top 8? I don't know. I think there's quite a few teams that have already surprised me so far this season. But look, it was a good win. It was just something they had to get done. I find Brisbane really interesting at the moment, and I think we'll talk about it. It's more for me about Collingwood rather than Brisbane. But Dan McStay coming out of that forward line has completely thrown Brisbane's forward line into a bit of a
Mhm.
mess. And then you look at the way he's playing at Collingwood and how well their forward line is functioning when traditionally they haven't really had. They've obviously got Cox and Myercheck, but they haven't traditionally had that, big key forward and, really impact key forward like a lot of other clubs do. So I just had Donnie. He was sensational, 5 goals, and obviously the reenactment of Nicky Winmar's famous stance on the ground, some 30 years on. I think it was so powerful. He'd obviously had a really challenging week coming on the back of that racial that racial taunt that came from the crowd the week before. So I'm really happy for him. I love his potential and I love his promise. And I think that Thursday night he just completely owned it, both on the field and off the field. And I
Fun sometimes about the internet. So I'm gonna try to until she comes back. I kind of continue to talk because she's kind of stuck in a vortex, unfortunately. Um,
where
there we-
excited. Can you hear me?
I got you back. Sometimes the internet sometimes can play such fun tricks with us. So I'm gonna
Damn
kind of
it! I was on such a good roll there
you
too.
were, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I absolutely love that they brought up the Nikki Winmar thing because honestly, I thought it was so powerful and I completely agree, but it's almost kind of sad that he had to do it. It is very frustrating that we are 30 years from that iconic moment and it still has to be something that that it has to be done or that somebody had to do it because of the disgusting and vile behavior and the fact that if I hear correctly, and again I'm not 100% sure, that if it was a Saints supporter and Nikki Winmar was a Saints player, that's frustrating that particular thing happened. So again, Jamara, my only worry with Jamara is that does this get expectations up of okay, here he goes, he's going to be the number one overall pick again, and he's going to go for 3 goals, like he's becoming the next embodiment of Buddy Franklin, becomes that great player. I worry this raises expectations because he's been a little hot and cold. He'll have 3 games where he scores nothing, and then he'll have 2 games where he's kicking 3 and 4 goals. So it's always kind of crazy. So I agree. Dougie's bit get the win again. My tip's thrown off because I thought the Lions form coming off the D's win would be good, and I don't know. They're one of several Jekyll and Hyde teams this year that I'll be fascinated to see. We'll jump to Friday night footy and to kind of go off of it. I agree with you that this was a game. If you look at the score, this is an atrocious score line, but it did start off very wet weather footy. The Collingwood Magpies get a 14-point win over Richmond. Richmond had several key outs. Dusty Martin's out, Hopper's out. So they Broad was out because of the sling tackle. So this game was one of those that Pies get the win. They stay 3-0, but they underwhelmed me with their lack of kicking goals. They kept it exciting once the ground kind of dried out in the second quarter. But I agree with you. This underwhelmed me a little bit because I think this kind of showed the Pies are still vulnerable. That if you can kind of keep the footy away from them, you still have a chance to beat them. But the Tigers, they just didn't have the horses in the fight to be able to do it. So your thoughts on this?
I am obsessed with Collingwood. I'm obsessed with the way they play, despite the fact that Friday night didn't quite live up to their past 2 weeks. For me, they are exciting. They have such an incredible energy about them right now. For me, I still think, and this is so premature, we're only at the end of round 3, but they are, for me, the team to beat at this stage of the year. I mean, it's so early, and obviously premierships aren't won in late March, early April, but the way they play is attractive. Their chemistry is there. Their synergy is there. It's very much a team. It's a team mentality. There's obviously standouts. I mean, Scott Pendlebury just wound back the clock. He was just scintillating. He was so good. But there's obviously great individual performances every week. But for me, Collingwood, I'm in love with them. I don't even know what else to tell you. And obviously I acknowledge Richmond obviously had some big outs, but the fact that Collingwood were challenged and they obviously weren't at their best and they still managed to come away with the win. It scares me to think how the rest of their year is going to go because I just think it'll just be on another level. That's where I'm at with Collingwood at the moment.
the thing that scares me is Cox is now hurt and Cameron's now hurt. So now they have zero talls. McStay's gonna have to go into the ruck, which I don't think it affects their forward line as much as some people think it may, just because McStay is a new addition. So it's not going to change their forward line. Ash Johnson comes in, is athletic as all get out. So I think they'll be okay. But I think it is going to affect their ruck tap because they've been so good in the contest this year with adding Tommy Mitchell. So it's kind of changed that midfield a little bit. So I'll be interested to see what Fly does, because this is going to change the structure of his team just the tiniest bit, having McStay move forward. And he really doesn't have another ruckman for what could be at least 3 weeks, with both Cameron and Cox being out with significant injuries. Nothing that they're going to come back with anytime very, very soon. So I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to let you have your moment, because your team has been one of the other talks of the town. And going down to Tassie, I will admit it, I was on the North train. I tipped them. I thought the atrocious way the Hawks were playing in the first two rounds, I thought this is North's opportunity to get that big third win, keep themselves going. Marnie, what happened? I know LDU is a laid out. What happened?
Um, Sadly, or maybe fortunately, made the decision last minute to actually not go down to Tassie. So I watched it from my parents' living room, and I mean, it was atrocious watching it from there. So I can only imagine it would have been worse in person. I don't know. For me, it was, I spoke to a lot of people after the game, and people were like, it'll come, and, it's just a bump in the road and they're still young. And I don't think it really is as bad as people think it is. And I don't think it's that bad.
Mm-mm.
Like in hindsight, it's really not that bad. We didn't pay Hawthorn enough respect. So that's the issue. That's the biggest issue for me. I think that we probably thought, oh, we're up and about, we're 2-0. We haven't won more than 3 games in a season since 2019. Like, I don't know, like, if we're forgetting who we are and what we've done as well. And I understand Hawthorn had a very, very dismal 2 weeks before. But this was their grand final. North should have known they were up and about for this. North should have known that, this was the one of the games of the year they would have looked and said, yeah, we can definitely win that. They would have had fire in the belly, the Clarko Cup, yada, yada, yada. But for me, it was just disappointing because for the first time in what feels like maybe nearly 3 years, probably since the start of 2020, I actually went into a game mildly confident. I thought we've played really good football the last 2 weeks. If we can back it up again with the same way we've been playing, then we really should win. We should have a good win over Hawthorn. It shouldn't be within a goal. Like, we should really be able to put them away by 20, 30 points. So to have that expectation and then for us to come out, we were awful for 3 quarters, or for 2.5 quarters. I mean, the fact that we still gave it a bit of a fight and we got within a goal in the last quarter, I mean, that's in the position we were in, that's kind of all you can really ask for. After we were missing our two best midfielders in LGU and Simpkin, but I think Phillips and Powell both missed an opportunity to really step up in their place. Cunnington was superb. I thought Todd Goldstein played very well, but I think that unfortunately that's maybe something we're missing is, both Powell and Phillips have not played a lot of football, and I totally get that. But you've got to take those opportunities, especially Will Phillips is a number 3 pick. He's been in and out of the side for the past few weeks. He hasn't really been able to break himself into the side. And the fact that we played in Perth last week and Dan Howe was picked as the sub over Phillips, I mean, that for me, that's got to get a bit of fire in your belly. So I'm not like I'm not criticizing them, and I'm not saying that they're not going to become great players. I think both of them have incredible potential, and I'm willing to be patient because LDU's taught me to be patient. But for me, it was just disappointing that I don't think either of them really saw the opportunity as big as it was and relished it. I thought they were both quite underwhelming. And I know they had big shoes to fill, but that's kind of how I saw it. But they weren't alone. They weren't
I
alone. There was
completely,
plenty of passengers on Saturday.
yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's just one of those that you had a stumbling point at the worst possible time. This was a great opportunity for you to be 3-0 and to get the North faithful up and about, and it just didn't happen. And you're gonna learn. It's a young side. I trust Clark will be fine. I think there'll be a few strong words in the change rooms this week, but I think this week keep an eye out on North. Keep an eye out. I have this sneaky feeling that they're gonna be up and about this week. So we'll jump up to Sydney in a game that really is a perfect capsule of what you said earlier. An underwhelming game as the Carlton Blues just barely beat the GWS Giants 74-64. I'm not going to go into the dissent controversy because I think it's really, for me personally, again, maybe this is the coach in me. I think this is, people are making a mountain out of a molehill. They were warned, the players were warned, they did it again. Plain and simply for me. The Blues were atrocious. 20 behinds in this game. 20. This game should not have been this close. If I'm a Blues supporter, I am livid right now because this was a team you could have a huge percentage boost on, and you totally and completely kept them in the game because you could not kick straight. I know it's not simple to kick straight. I've kicked and I've coached kickers before. It happens. But 20, that is insane. Have you ever seen 20 behinds in a game before, Marnie?
Unfortunately, I've seen 22 behinds and we lost to Adelaide in the 1998 grand final. So that's a sore point for me. Let's not go
Oh,
there.
sorry.
Um, but bad kicking is bad football. I
Hmm.
mean, thinking about back to the North game, Hawthorn probably could have beat us by 5, 6, 7 goals if they wanted to, but they also just couldn't put us away. They were just completely off in front of goal as well. Interesting. You're talking about Collingwood on Friday night and how you thought that game made them look vulnerable. Do you think that this game made Carlton look vulnerable? Because that's how I've
Hmm.
perceived it.
I
And
agree.
maybe do you think we've kind of had the wool pulled over our eyes onto that big win against Geelong last week, and they drew with Richmond to open the season. But do you think this makes that? Do you think it makes them vulnerable? Because that's how I perceive it.
It really does. Well, and then we look at further results again. How Geelong played this weekend makes me think that too. I think then, like I said, as this performance against GWS, I think if I'm Carlton, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous as a Blue supporter right now because this is a team. Again, it's on paper, and again, paper is a waste of time really thinking about it. But on paper, this is a very strong, very good Blues team versus a GWS team that I think they're in transition. Kingsley is transitioning this team from Leon Cameron's team to his team to kind of the difference. So I'm a little worried if I'm a Blue supporter because this shows a vulnerability that I don't think many people thought. Again, the Tigers game early in the season, I think it was a very contested game, first game of the season. You're going to have some nerves. And then the Geelong win, everybody was high on it because you look at last year's premiers and they beat the premiers. Well, as we kind of see, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, the premiers in last year are not playing like premiers this year. So, but we'll discuss that here in just a second. So, I agree with you. I think this does make Carlton seem a little bit vulnerable because they're not having the performance they should. Again, it's on the road. Was it great conditions at Giant Stadium? No, but I mean, still, this is a Blues team with Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay, two Coleman winners, and you kick 20 behinds. I'm a little worried if I'm a Blues supporter. Definitely, for sure. So, but we'll jump from that to the other story of this season. Ross Lyon and his Saints are 3-0. Did I just say that? Marnie, did I just say that? The Saints are
I can't,
three
honestly,
and
I can't believe
0
it.
with 15 guys on their injury list. I mean, they're pulling guys from the local Hungry Jacks to be in their forward line. Are you kidding me right now? And how cool were those 150-year jumpers with the collars and Jack Higgins, you legend, popping the collar after each goal? This was insane. The Bombers, this was a great game of footy. Absolutely great game of footy. I love when Essendon is doing. I think they're a team to keep an eye out. Whether they're going to be in the finals contention, we'll have to see. Again, very early in the season, only 3 games in. But this was an incredible game of footy. And for the Saints supporters who have been through so much, this was cool to see them get a win on the 150th birthday and an impressive one, and now be top of the ladder after round three. How mental is this, Marnie?
Oh, it's crazy. I think this was definitely the game of the round. This was probably the one most entertaining game for me. I just think the way, first of all, the way that St Kilda honoured their 150th anniversary was superb. But I just think that they did such an excellent job from, the pre-game to the jumpers, and then obviously to get the win was fantastic. But they are. I mean, I never ever thought in my lifetime I would say that Ross Lyon's team is playing an exciting attacking brand of football.
Hmm.
But here we are in 2023. I mean, that's, obviously Ross has coached St Kilda in a previous lifetime and then went over to Fremantle. And for me, to see he's got, he's traditionally this defensive lockdown kind of game style, but they're coming out, they're attacking, they look like they've got a bit of freedom, a bit of room to move. I think they've been great. I
Yeah.
think St Kilda have been great and they deserve every win they've notched up on the board so far. I think Essendon were very gallant in their effort to fight back, but St Kilda were just too good. And as you said, Donnie, the injury list, and unfortunately for St Kilda, it looks like it's going to keep growing, but they just keep fighting. And they've got the
Hmm.
Suns this week on Saturday night. Now the Suns will be up and about after their win against Geelong over the weekend, but I mean they very realistically could go 4-0. Got no
Hmm.
doubt about it. The way they're playing at the moment, it's sort of hard to go against them at this stage.
It's very interesting, and I have another question later on in the year because later on in the episode I want to ask you what you think about it. So I'll kind of tease that a little bit. Is who's the better story so far, the Pies or the Saints? We'll tease that a little bit. Let you think about that. So we'll jump to what I think is a underprivileged game every year, and that is the showdown in South Australia as Port Adelaide take on the Crows. And this is a game where the prison bars jumpers get to see the light of day, which I absolutely love. I think they're fantastic jumpers to be able to honor the Port Adelaide Magpies before they came into the competition, became the power. But the Crows spoil the party with a big 31-point win. And Isaac Rankin, you beauty. I'm not so sure about your hairstyle, but we'll stay off of that particular topic. Crows get a big win, surprising me a little bit. Your thoughts on this? Because Crows 117, Phil Thorpe kicks five, and Isaac Rankin kicks four. 9 goals by that pair. Crowies are up and about.
Yeah, I thought both of them were excellent. Phil Thorpe, I can't even say that properly. He's a rare talent. I mean, he is just going to be something exciting to watch for years and years and years to come. Very interesting game. I agree with you. The showdown is one of my favorite games of the year, and this one again didn't disappoint. I was
Mhm.
surprised by the result. I think Port Adelaide's been another team who's just completely surprised me. This year, I really thought they kind of had all their ducks in a row and they were really ready to launch. But I mean, with the exception of probably Geelong, for me, they've almost been the second most disappointing team of the year. I just would never
Mhm.
have picked this from them. I really thought they were going to come to play this year, and they've kind of done anything but at this stage. Um, yeah, I mean, there's not for me. I mean, I don't see either of them really having much of an impact this year. I know we're going the early crow, pardon the pun.
Mhm.
I guess we're just on the back of round three, but it was for me. I just look at the game as it was a really good, entertaining game, as all showdowns are. But I actually don't really have anything to read beyond that for either club at this stage. I mean, Port's disappointing and it was a fantastic win for the Crows. But I don't really have a bigger picture analysis outside of just it being a really good, entertaining game of
Yeah,
football.
they're one of like 6 clubs that I was sitting here going, I don't know what to think about right now because I there's not enough consistency. Again, 3 games in, so it's hard to kind of pinpoint where people are going to end up. I think the ladder it's going to flip on its head at least a couple of times just because of the fact that you look at it now. I think there's 3 teams that were in the bottom 8 last year that are in the finals as we speak again, 3 rounds in, so it's going to change. But they're in this Jekyll and Hyde type of situation. You have them there, you have Carlton, you have Adelaide, you have all both of these teams here. Fremantle is now kind of thrown themselves into it. So I'm fascinated to see how this goes. Again, Crowley's incredible performance. I agree with you. I think Port Adelaide. If I'm Kenny Hinkley, I'm a little worried because you 1-2 start after an 0-5 start last year. Not good, not good. And especially his seat was already hot. It's The temperature's getting turned up just the littlest bit. So I want to go to this. We have to. The biggest upset of the season so far. Again, whether this is legitimately an upset now this year, we'll find out as the season goes on. The Suns. The Suns beat the Premiers 73-54. Cats go down by 19. Marnie, give me your first reaction when you saw this score. When you saw this score, what went through your head? Because I remember watching the highlights going, I know the Suns win this, and the Cats were in this for most of this game. I was not expecting this margin. I was not expecting the Suns to be in this, especially after a dismal performance against the Swans and then an okay performance down in Melbourne against the Saints. But I was not expecting this result. 19 points over the defending premiers. Are you kidding me?
No, it's definitely not something I expected. I think it's more, and it's no disrespect to the Suns. I mean, I don't know how we're still here. They've been in the competition for what, 12, 13 years now, and we're still at
Mhm.
this point where it's like, oh my God, like wow, they've pulled off this massive victory and everyone gets around them and whatever. I don't get how we're still here. For me, I just don't think anyone's ever going to take the Suns seriously because they've never given us a reason to take them seriously. I
Mhm.
feel like we should be sitting here and saying, wow, it's a really solid win by the Suns. It's a big statement win now. They've just got to keep going, keep going. Whereas, like, for me, and it is a big upset. So I'm not going to take away from that, but I just they make it difficult to take them seriously, in my opinion. So the fact that everyone's like, oh my God, like just losing their mind over it, I think was quite funny. Geelong though, I mean, I sat there at the end of the game against Carlton last week and I thought, oh, it's Geelong, they'll be right, they'll bounce back. They never
Mhm.
really stay down for too long. That's not really, they're such a phenomenal outfit, just from the top down, the professionalism, the culture, the environment, it just bleeds success everywhere you look. So for me, I was just sort of like, oh, they'll bounce back, no worries. And, they've had two pretty difficult opponents in Collingwood and Carlton. I think that, coming into the season, they'll probably tipped both of them to be top six, if not top four, the pair. So I think, oh, okay, they're obviously just a bit of a premiership hangover, but this was something I just didn't expect. And it makes me wonder, and I love Patrick Dangerfield, and I think he's a deserving captain of the club, and I love him with all my heart. But it just makes you wonder, like, obviously Joel Selwood retiring at the end of the year, how much that has had an impact on this group. Has it had more of an impact than maybe we thought initially? I don't know. I think Patrick Dangerfield's a phenomenal leader, and a outstanding player, and he is, if you want someone to learn your kids to learn from, he is one of them. But 0-3 under his watch, um, he would be so disappointed. He'd be devastated, I would think. And so, yeah, it just makes you sort of start questioning things like this. Well, what's really changed since they won the premiership 6 months ago? And this is one of those big things.
No, I agree. And I know that they're missing a couple of guys, but they got Tom Stewart back, which I think he's been their linchpin in the back. But Jasney's been out, Henry's been out. So and when you have three of your top six out for the first basically game and a half, I can kind of understand the first two. This one with Stewart back, I thought the Suns don't exactly have a scary front line, shall we say? I mean, Casbolt has found himself a little bit of a renaissance out up in the Gold Coast. Marbio Chol has found himself sitting on the bench because of it. King has been inconsistent, shall we say. So I thought this was a perfect game for Stewart to come back. He could kind of have a little bit of fun. He'd be able to kind of patrol the back line like he does. And it just didn't work that way. So I'm agreeing with you. I really do agree with you. Like, is there a leadership gap a little bit? Like, I think Danger is a great player, but there is a level difference between what Selwood brought to this team and what Danger is bringing. So again, long season. We'll discuss this a little bit more here in a little bit, but it's weird seeing Geelong 18th on the ladder. Like, I've just never seen this. So it's very, very weird sensation. So I don't want to go to this one, but we will. Everybody knows I'm a huge Swans fan, and the MCG is turning into a house of horrors for the Swans. A 50-point loss to the D's. And I talk with many a Swans fan, and I will take nothing away from the D's. The D's played an incredible game of footy. This is the D's that I thought we were going to see this year with Max gone. So without Max gone, for them to do this, this was impressive. This was very impressive a performance for me. The Swans helped them out a little bit, some skill errors and some brain fades in like worst possible times, but the D's made them pay for it. There have been games where the Swans have made mistakes and the team that they're playing has not made them pay for it. The D's made them pay each and every time. Come out hot as a firecracker, 6 goals in the first quarter, and then a 7 or 8 goal quarter in the fourth. So again, all due respect to the D's, fantastic game. I know Horst Longmire is going to light a fire into the Swans team. I'm not panicking. I know there's some people that are like, "Oh my God, we're not going to make fire." I'm like, calm down. Sometimes social media fans they do my head in a little bit because they jump so far. Like, we win one game, we're gonna win the flag. We lose one game, we're gonna finish bottom eight. I'm like, whoa, like calm down a little bit. Okay. It's one game. It's the third game of the season. Just chill. So, and normally, like I said, I tell most people when I do this podcast, I try not to be red-hatted swan Donnie. I try to be Coach Donnie, talking about this as even as possible. Again, D's great performance, fantastic game, some absolutely incredible performances. Clary Oliver, holy shnikes, what a performance, an absolute bull. And he does something he doesn't normally do, doesn't kick a ton of goals. He's usually that contested beast that gets out to his facilitators, and that's how they score. This one kicks 2 goals in this game. Fantastic performance. Did you get a chance to see any of this one? Because I mean, again, just an incredible performance by the D's in this one.
A big statement win by the D's. I completely agree with you, Donnie. I think this is kind of what we've been expecting and kind of waiting for them to warm up to kind of deliver this. They were red hot. I didn't catch too much of it, unfortunately, but I think it's the Swans is interesting, and I mean, you obviously there's no way you can have your coach hat on, like it's your team. I would never ever. I'm always biased when it comes to North, and I'll put my hand up and say that.
There's
Um,
nothing wrong
but
with
I
that.
put absolutely not. We're passionate. That's it's part of who we
I
are
appreciate
and
it.
what we do.
It takes a very special ability to be able to do that. I'm a weird fan. I can't one eye myself very much. I tell most people, I said I can be a rabid supporter, but I can never be one eyed. Like, it's just not in my nature. Maybe it's just because I watch so many games that I'm kind of used to being able to have that ability to kind of pull Red Hat Donnie off for a bit and go, that's the correct call. I've had people get angry with me around me. Like, I'll go to a sporting event here, and you have the home team, you have the one-eyed fan that everything that their team does is correct. And I'll be like, nope, that's the right call. And the looks I get around me is hilarious. So
It
it's a
looks could
unique
kill.
talent. It's a unique talent. It's hard sometimes because I want to be that one-eyed fan, but I can't be, because I do this podcast, and B, I love the sport. So I try to be as neutral as possible. So again, respect one-eyed fans very much so. I have great discussions sometimes with them because sometimes it's interesting to see them tell me what they believe. And I kind of throw them off when I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but what about this? And then I kind of get this look like, oh crap. So it's fun sometimes.
I think the Swans will be fine. I kind of put them in the same basket as Geelong. Maybe you don't want me to do that considering how Geelong started their season. But it's interesting. You need to be able to play well at the MCG. Unfortunately, in this game, you don't have a choice. And, I mean, the Swans probably play there more than North play there during the year. They play there, what, 2 or 3 times maximum a year. You have to be able to front up when you go there. So for them to have kind of a bit of a shaky track record there over the last sort of what 4, 5, 6 games. That's a concern for me. Am I concerned about the Swans? Not really. I think Melbourne just really came out to play, and it's sort of they were on tip top of their game. But it's the record at the MCG and their kind of lack of performance there. That's what would concern me if I was a Swans fan, definitely.
Well, that's only two. If I remember correctly, I think they've in the last 6 games they're 4-2. They've actually played the G well. It's just the last 2 games are the grand final, as we can tell, and then this one. Those are the last two. After that, they beat the D's twice last year at the G. They beat Richmond there in 20, and I can't remember the previous game before that, but they were like 3 or 4-0 going into the grand final at the G. So I don't think it's a G hex, shall we say? It's just one of those they've just played two really good teams at the G in their last two games. So I don't think it's the arena. It's the teams that they played and just the performance of the Swans in both of those games. So we won't stay on the Swans. I know sometimes some of the podcast people are like, you talk about the Swans too much. I actually don't, but we'll jump to it. We'll jump out west. And I have a ton of friends that are huge in the Western Derby or Western Derby. I can never remember how they want to say it out there. So my apologies to the Western and to the West Coast Eagles and Fremantle supporters. Again, this is another one. I tipped West Coast because Fremantle looked absolutely atrocious in the first two games. I should just stop tipping. I really should just stop tipping. Fremantle and Luke Jackson finally steps up and gets a huge 41-point win over the Eagles. But I feel horrible for the Eagles because they became an ER ward as Shuey, Ryan, Witherden, McGovern. I think they lost five guys in this game. Simpson cannot catch a break. And Fremantle finally goes bunta and actually starts to play. So Wrong has a great game and they start kicking goals. Is Fremantle back? Or did they get kind of lucky that the Eagles kind of eventually injury prone themselves out to let Fremantle get this win?
Those are some big names for the Eagles as well. It's not like you're
Hmm.
talking about fringe players that are injuring themselves. You've got key players. I mean, obviously Shuey and Ryan and McGovern. I mean, those are three guys who have been their best 10 players. So it's a bit of a disaster for West Coast. Unfortunately for them. Yeah, interesting. I don't know. I've always thought Fremantle we're going to have a good year. I think I definitely was pleasantly surprised to beat them last week, and surprised sort of they started the season 0-2. Um, you can't really afford to be slow off the mark. I mean, you can have off games and still manage to scrape through, and we've seen a couple of those. I mean,
Hmm.
Carlton on the weekend is a perfect example of that. And sort of just grinding out games and getting it done. Their start to the year has really surprised me. West Coast, not so much. I think they're pretty much between them and Hawthorn have been widely tipped to finish along with North in the bottom three. So
Hmm.
I don't know what to make for Fremantle. You're talking about the Jackal and Hyde teams earlier. I absolutely put them in that category because their
Hmm.
best is up there with some of the best in the competition, but their worst, as we've seen in the past couple of weeks, is pretty atrocious. It's a
Hmm.
similar, you kind of Fife hasn't really been on the top of his game, and you've obviously lost Mundy to retirement at the end of last year. So you kind of they lost Lob to the Bulldogs over the trade period, but they obviously acquired Luke Jackson. It could just be a little bit of they're just still feeling each other out. Those are some really big changes to their structure.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, I don't know. I can't take too much out of this game, to be honest, because as you said, West Coast could barely, you know, field a team by the end of it. And Fremantle probably just took that opportunity and kind of capitalized on that, on top of just probably being the better side on the day. I, oh, I love him. I absolutely love him. I think he's going to be an absolute superstar, and he'll definitely be a future captain of that football club. And Luke Jackson finally gave Fremantle fans kind of what they kind of have been hoping they would see over the past couple of weeks. Again, I feel like it's a similar situation, and I feel like this may be because it's just this internal rivalry, similar to the showdown. I feel like you kind of just take it for what it is on the day and kind of move on. Um, yeah, that's that's for me. That's sort of how I feel about it, similar to the showdown.
Yeah, I agree. And then I think it's kind of the hidden ones that I think are a little bit off for Fremantle is the fact Blake Acres is now with Carlton. And then, as you know, as a North fan, Griffin Logue is now donning the North Melbourne blue and white. So I think Fremantle lost a little bit more than I was expecting. Like for a team that made the finals, they had an exodus that I think really it's going to take them a few rounds to kind of get what's going to happen because they lost, like I said, Griffin Logue, Blake Acres. Those are a couple of good players that I think really
Yeah,
kind of
and
helped that team last year. Jackson comes in for lob. Is an exact like no, because Jackson can go in the midfield lob. If he goes in the midfield, he's going as a ruck. He's not going as a midfielder. And Jackson started this game as a midfielder with Sean Darcy, which should scare some people in the competition that think about that big midfield marking targets. At least it would be an absolute pain in the rear end to try to stop. So again, Fremantle, I'm gonna wait on my judgment on that a little bit. Again, West Coast injury issues. We'll have to see. Did that affect the end of this game? I don't know. Again, Fremantle is the better side nowadays. I think West Coast is running into they're on the road to rebuild. And I hate saying that for West Coast fans, and I know several. They're on the road to rebuild. I think they're going to have to just flip this list because there's too many veterans that are not performing, and there's no youth coming up. So we'll have to see how it goes. So that does it. 9 games down in a mental round 3. So we'll jump to my section that I call the burning questions, and I teased it a little bit earlier. We're going to find out the answer. As I said, Saints Pies, the only 2 undefeated teams left after 3 rounds. So I asked this of you, Marnie. You said you loved watching the Pies, and I've loved watching the Saints. Which is the better story so far in this season? The Pies' excitement in the Harlem Globetrotter-esque, almost flashy flair that is the Pies 3-0, or the Saints' gutsy out of nowhere, just get it done for Ross. I gotta hear this. Who do you think's the better story?
Collingwood's the better side, but St Kilda's the better story for me. It's just it's yes, it's doing it for Ross, and yes, it's kind of just been this this 3-0 start to the season that no one expected, but it's just the way they're doing it. I mean, like I said earlier,
Mhm.
Ross Lyon has got a side that is attacking the football and playing passionate, exciting brand of football. I just never thought in my lifetime I would ever say that.
Mhm.
Looking back on the last 2 sides that he's coached. Now, will this work? I don't know. I mean, time will tell. I hope so for St Kilda fans. I think it's so exciting, and they've got an injury list a mile long. So what they've been able to really produce on back also, shouldn't be. I wouldn't be taking this for granted, and I wouldn't just be dismissing this as a good start to the season. I think it's what they've been able to achieve. I think has been remarkable, to be honest.
Mhm.
Um, that's yeah. So I think Collingwood the better side, but if you want to talk about the story, it's the Saints for me.
I agree. 100% agree. What Ross Line is doing with an injury list, like I said, grabbing guys from Hungry Jacks to be able to do your forward line. I completely agree with that. It'll be interesting. I'm almost, as I told a few Saints fan, I said, I think the Saints are scary because imagine once they get healthy, like Battle Shield. I mean, unfortunately, I think Mason Wood, I'm crossing my fingers he doesn't add to this particular injury list, but think about when they get everybody back. They're going to be scary with that running gun style, letting the players play, using their strengths. It'll be so much fun to watch. So we had kind of insinuated it earlier. My next question again, Cats 0-3. I did not expect to have those words come out of my mouth. And they're the first premier since 1975. And unfortunately, I know you're a North fan. It was North Melbourne that did this. Was they're the first 0-3 defending premier. Is the panic button being hit in Geelong that they are 0-3 and they just look listless through the midfield? Hawkins is underdone. Cameron is still waiting for the birth of his child, so we don't know if he'll miss a ground or not. And they just injuries are starting to pile up. How DeConning will come off after a wicked head clash during this game. Is there panic stations down in Geelong?
No, and maybe that's naive of me to think, but I always, and like I again said earlier, I always just expect Geelong to come
Mhm.
round. I mean, you think about the Swans back in 2017, they started the season what 0-6,
0-6.
and they only lost 2 more games for the rest of the home and away season, and ended up in
Hmm.
the finals. And I always put Geelong and Sydney in the same category. For me, I think they are the 2 most professional, most successful clubs. The culture is just so rich, and I always feel like it'll just work out. It'll just work itself out for them. if it's not this year, then give it another within the next 5 years, I'll be back in contention, no problem. I don't think there's panic stations. They don't look like the benchmark. I mean, very early on last year, they looked like the benchmark. And I think they've looked like that quite a few times over the last few seasons, very early on the benchmark. So maybe the slow start suits them. I don't know. But yeah, no panic for me. Like I said, maybe that's naive. But in the time I've been watching football and growing up watching football, I mean, I've known Geelong to be excellent for more of my life than I have known them to be not so good.
Hmm.
So for me, I just assume Geelong's always going to work themselves out and they're always going to figure it out. And I think that's going to happen again. Whether, like I said, whether it's this year or not, that I don't know. But they'll figure it out. They will be fine.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're grabbing the hammer to smash the glass to hit the panic button, but I think they're definitely the hands itching a little bit closer because they've started three and I think they started 3-2 last year before they went on that mental run at the end of the year where they literally nobody could beat them except for like a group of supermen. So it'll be fascinating to see, but I agree. I don't think there's panic stations, but there's worry. I think there's worry in Geelong a little bit. So,
There'd have to be some unrest and some
mhm.
unease. I'm not denying that,
Yeah.
but it's definitely not, for me, it wouldn't be a panic station sort of thing.
I agree. Completely agree. So we're talking to a Roos fan, so I always try to throw in a question about the side, especially if I've got a huge fan like you. I can't not take the opportunity. Again, as we kind of stated earlier, a tough loss this weekend, but again, we're kind of used to it. Again, maybe did you take Hawthorne a little bit for granted? So what are your expectations as this season goes on? Do you think we see an improvement that they jump up the ladder? They're not the wooden spooners, but they're going to get up to that 15th, 14th mark? Or are we going to again kind of take this round by round because we just don't know what Clarko is going to do to this side?
I'm still excited and I'm still optimistic. I think that's kind of the fun. I don't know if it's fun. It's actually highly stressful, but that's
Hmm.
kind of the fun of the position we're in now. We've had three of the most disgraceful years in the club's history. It's been horrific, for lack of a better word, just on field, off field. It's been a total shambles. And it's exciting that we've got a clean slate and that we actually can we can really have an opportunity here. I just want to see on field improvement. That was also what disappointed me on Saturday. If we had come out and played the way we played the first two rounds of the season and get beat, okay, no worries, you cop it on the chin, whatever, you move on. But we didn't.
Hmm.
We have had such a team mindset when we have been, our team has been defense. It's been a defensive model. We've played so well. The pressure we've applied up around the ground, the work rate's been through the roof, and all of that just went out the window on Saturday. That was what was disappointing. We can see what we're trying to do, and it clearly works because we had two really good wins to start the year. I just want to see us play consistently and leave nothing, like bring nothing back, leave it all out on the field week in, week out. That's all you can ask for as a supporter. And if the way we played in the first 2 weeks only wins us 2 or 3 more games for the year, so be it. So be it. But if we can't get that, we know there's winning formula. And if we can't get that right and apply that week in, week out, then that's where I'm lost, and that's where the frustration comes from more than the loss itself. It's the manner in which we lose. So for me, I just want us to go and have fun. I think Jack Zabel's a really good example of that. He's been excellent the last 3 weeks. He's found form. He's just having a good time playing football. That's kind of what I want to see from North for the year, and just to really have a red hot crack. So for me, I just really hope that we can, hopefully the performance on Saturday as a performance, not as a result, we can kind of reassess and say, look, we need to go back to what won us the first 2 games of the year and apply that for the rest of the year. If it gets you wins, great. If it doesn't get you wins, at least you can walk away feeling like you've actually given your all, and you walk away still feeling satisfied with the performance, and the result just didn't go your way. So that's kind of where I'm at with North, on the back of the first 3 rounds and then moving on to the rest of the year.
Awesome. Yep, completely agree. Again, it's building blocks. This isn't going to be fixed in a day. As much as I said, people were starting to, could North Melbourne win a premiership in 5 years? I'm like, you can't look that far ahead. You've got to take it game by game. 100% agree. But I think you've got a great coach. I think the culture is going to have to be something that's built, but you got some great building blocks. I think LDU is something you can build on. I again, it stinks that he couldn't play this weekend because I think that does change that result a little bit. So 100% agree with you. So that is going to do it for our burning questions. We jump to my one of my favorite things because this always causes some controversy. Well, not controversy, but some conversations. I do a team of the week every week. So here's the way I kind of do it, Marnie. I'm a little bit. I tend to focus a little bit more on score involvement and scoring. So goals behinds tend to get you a little bit of a tick up. So this I have made my 22 for this last round. I do six defenders, five mids, a ruck, and six forwards. So there's your 18, and then four bench players with one from each position: ruck, mid, forward, and defender. So here's my team. Let me know what you think of let me know what you think of this side being able to form together. Okay. On the defense, we'll start off Collingwood's Nick Dacos. Again, it's hard not to get this young man in because he's absolutely scintillating. He is one of the drivers of this Collingwood team. Can't not get this young man in. Richmond's Liam Baker. I think he's their Mr. Utility. You can put him anywhere on the ground and he does everything for the Richmond Tigers. He's one of those you'd love to have him. He's annoying as hell, but you love to have him because he's an incredible, incredible player, just a little gnat everywhere. Carlton, Sam Doherty again, coming back from everything that he's dealt with, and he has just been scintillatingly good. So much fun to watch. I hate saying this, Adelaide's Jordan Dawson, losing him from this one still stings a little bit, but again, the young man is performing on Adelaide, and I'm so happy for him that he found a place where he can perform well. Geelong's Tom Stewart, again, he's just that incredible player on that halfback line for the Cats. And last but not least, Sydney's Nick Blakey. Performance kicking a goal in this game, kind of keeping the Swans in this. His ability to run off halfback is dangerous when he can. Another good performance. We jump to the midfielders. Brisbane's Lockie Neal. Again, I mean, you don't win a Brownlow for nothing. The guy is an incredible talent when ball in hand. He's very, very deadly with it. Essendon's Dylan Shield kicks a couple of games in this game, kind of kept Essendon in this game, continued to push against a Saints team that's having a red hot crack this year. Port's Connor Rosie. Again, the young man is still just incredibly, he's blossoming now these last couple of years. I can't wait to see him grow up even more in this Port midfield. Adelaide's Rory Laird. Stumpy is an incredible player. Just a great performance by him being able to sneak forward and kick a goal in this game. And then I got to watch it personally. Melbourne's Clayton Oliver kicking two goals in this game out of the midfield for the D's. Ruckman, Sean Darcy, my gosh, absolutely back to his best. Absolute there. The big lug is absolutely incredible. Sometimes he baffles me with his athleticism for his size. So incredible performance there. We jump to the forwards, and there's not a lot of differentiation on this because we had two teams that had some incredible goals. Start off again, as we said at the start of the top at the top of the show. The Western Bulldogs, Jamara Ugle-Hagan, St. Kilda's Dan Butler and Jack Higgins, Adelaide's Riley Thilthorpe and Isaac Rankin, and Gold Coast's Jack Lukosius round out the forward line. So every single player in this list scored five or more goals in this round. We jump to the bench, as I said, one from each. Unfortunately, cover your ears, Marnie. Hawthorne's James Sicily is the defender on the bench. For the ruck, thank God Melbourne got him. I think a lot of Melbourne fans are probably praising this. Brody Grundy is the ruck on the bench. Hawthorne's Johnny Newcomb in the midfield for my midfielder. And last but not least, Frio's Michael Walters, Sonny Walters, kicking a nice four in this one. And that is my team of the round for round 22. A lot of goals, a lot of impact. Thoughts, Marnie? A scary team if you put this team on the roster. This team could do some damage in the AFL.
I can't believe there's no Patrick Cribs.
I like Cripsy, but he's one of those, and I told many people, and I've taken a lot of flack for this, is that Cripsy he put 42, but he had no scoreboard. He had 11 score involvements, but Clayton Oliver kicks two,
The
Dylan
man's
Shield
a
kicks two.
warrior.
I
Oh,
again, he's not going
I don't know what
forward as
more he's
much
got
as
to
years
do,
before.
Johnny.
I know, and I know
11
that's
score,
many
11 score involvements. That's fair.
11
I
score
think 11
involvements, but
scoring volume gives his side,
no
well, it gives his
behinds,
side
no
the best
goals.
opportunity. gives this side the best opportunity to score, and it's not his fault they couldn't kick straight. Gee whiz, very tough critic over here. I would have liked to say Mason Wood in there as well. I think he's just had
He
I wish he played
just
like this when
missed
he
out.
played at North. Maybe it's our fault playing him out of position. I'm a big Mason Wood fan. They're the only two. They're the two that I'm sort of looking for. I'm searching high and low. Gee, Cripper would be stiff. I hope there's not too many Carlton fans listening to this. They'll be coming after you after this
Eh,
podcast comes out, mate.
I look forward to I look forward to the conversation. I trust me. I had a Swan supporter in round one that was giving me a lot of stick because Chad Warner didn't make it. He's like, Warner had 30 disposals. Warner, and I was like, okay, yeah, I understand. And I told you my metric. My metric is goals and scoring involvement. Yes, again, Cripper 42 disposals, 11 scoring involvements. I saw all the statistics, but it's one of those where it's like he also played on a team that underperformed as well a little bit. So you kind of have to take that into to credit a little bit too. He had to do 42 because the rest of his team didn't play as well as but again, I love the discussion. It's a lot of fun for me because it does bring this like exactly what you said. That's a little bit stiff, Donnie. It's like I know, but hey, so we'll have to see. I love the conversation. The banter is fantastic. I appreciate it absolutely to no end. So we'll get to it. Okay, you don't do a tipping competition. Can I please talk you into giving me some tips for this round?
All right, just for you, just this round, because Easter weekend's one of my favorite weekends of the year.
All righty, let's jump into it. First game of the round sees the glamour team of the round as the Magpies head up to Brizzy to the get to the GABA to face the Brisbane Lions. Who do you think comes out with the Chuckies in this one?
Oh, I reckon Brisbane could be on for an upset here. They'd be really hoping to play better than they play on Thursday night against the Dogs. I think it'll be an interesting game. I my I think Collingwood will win, but I won't be surprised. It's weird. I
Mhm.
almost should just tip Brisbane. I won't be surprised if we see an upset here. I think Brisbane have got a really good chance, but you can't. It's so hard to tip against the Pies at the moment, the way they've
Mhm.
started the year.
Yep.
So I'll say the Pies.
I agree. I'm going to tip the Pies, but as I say with my upset one, I say it's my keep an eye on. It's the one I say, and this is my keep an eye on the round because this has the opportunity at the GABA. The Lions play the GABA well. The Pies coming off a little bit of a shaky performance against the Tigers. I think they're vulnerable, especially coming off the injury with Cameron being out. So I'm going to tip the Pies, but I will not shock me if the Lions win this one. So your heart and your soul here. North Melbourne hosts the Carlton Blues at Marvel Stadium. I know you're gonna tip it, so I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna tip Carlton. I think they're just a little too strong, but I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this. North is going to test these guys. This game is gonna come to the fourth quarter. I think guys like Cripps, guys like Mackay, guys like Kerno are going to be the reason that they win. This isn't a blowout. This is a tough physical game. North's going to stay in this, but I think Carlton's talent is going to be that their reason that they win it just late. So I'm not trying to disappoint you, Marnie, but I think North is in this. I really do.
I think we've got to perform. I think, we fought so hard for Good Friday, and with the exception of the first 2 years, in the first year it was the Bulldogs beat us by 3 points, and in the second year we smashed the Saints by 11 goals. We've dished up crap ever since. So
Mhm.
the pressure is well and truly on for North to perform. They've got to refine that form they had in the first 2 weeks if we're any chance. I mean, I'll always back North in, no matter how delusional some people might think I am. This is that you don't support a club if you don't think that the impossible is possible.
Mhm.
Is this impossible? Maybe not. But without Griffin Logue was handed a 1 week suspension, which North is going to the tribunal tomorrow night to challenge the suspension, which I think is they've got to do it because we don't have Mackay either. So we can't go into this game with Harry Mackay and Charlie Kerner and our our two key defenders are Aiden Core and Aiden Bonner. I mean, that is
Mhm.
just going to be a joke. So, and Griffin Logue's probably been one of our best players for the year so far. So Ben Mackay is still away off with his injury. So look, I go for North. I'll always tip North. I'll never tip against them. But gee whiz, it's going to be I hope we come to play, and I think we will. I think it'll be. I agree with you. I think it'll be closer than people think. I just hope we can get the job done.
Yeah, definitely. So jump over to the Adelaide Oval, where two of our Jekyll and Hyde teams, Adelaide Crows, host the Fremantle Dockers. Unfortunately, when the Dockers leave the Western Australia, I think they leave a little bit of that panaz that they've always had. I'm going to tip the Crowies in this one because I think they're up and about. I think Isaac Rankin and Riley Thilthorpe are a dangerous pair. I think they're going to be the pair that the Adelaide Crows grow with. So I'm going to tip the Crowies in this one. Dockers are in it, but Crowies just a little too strong at home, the Adelaide Oval. What do you think?
Okay, interesting. I actually the Dockers last year had quite a good record away from home. I'm actually going to tip the Dockers.
Okay.
I think they needed the win against West Coast to kind of get themselves going. They actually do play quite well outside of Perth. So I'm going to tip Freo. I think it'll be another very entertaining game, but I don't know. I feel like maybe that's just what they need. I think they just maybe needed the one win
Mhm.
to kind of get themselves going now. And I reckon that they'll be up and about, and I reckon they'll say this is a very winnable game. I don't blame them. So yeah, I'll go Freo for this one.
Okay. Hey, valid points. Completely agree with you. Have no argument with that. I can completely see that. So I just sometimes when they travel, again, last year they were really good on the road. This year, again, one game, so we'll have to see. So it'll be fascinating to see this one. Another head scratcher, MCG, Richmond Tigers, Western Bulldogs. What, what do you think? Because this one, I'm literally sitting here going, I want to flip a coin because I really don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one. They've both been pretty poor uh, to start the year. I'll go Richmond, um, but I have no logic to support that. It's just a gut feel that I've got. Probably the MCG factor is tipping it for me. Obviously, Richmond very vocal about their love for the MCG and hate going down the road to Marvel. So that's probably where that sort of decision comes from. I don't know. I still feel like, and I know the Dogs played in a grand final only a couple of years ago, but for me, I just feel like Richmond never go away. I feel like they're
Mhm.
always on your radar. So it's a bit of that, and then probably the MCG factor is what kind of tips that over for me. So I'll go with the Tigers.
Yeah. I'm weird. I'm thinking if Hopper's not back, Broad's still gonna be out a while. Dusty hamstring's gonna be 4 to 6 weeks. I'm gonna go the doggies. I don't like tipping against the Tigers because I agree with you. Tigers, they're just always there. They just have this feel that they're never going to go away. They're just always going to be there for a while until Dema Hardwick maybe leaves the club. So I'm going to tip the doggies in this one. I just think they've got a lot of positive momentum. They are healthier. I think they had a stronger game last week. I think they're on a little bit more positive momentum. I'm hoping Jamara can back up a great performance with another one. We'll definitely have to see. So I'm going to go for the upset here. I'm going to tip the doggies in this one because it seems like the games that I'm like stone cold, it's obvious. I need to tip against it because that's the way this season has been going. So we'll have to see. We'll jump to it. The story of the year, Marvel Stadium, St. Kilda Saints, Gold Coast Suns. Good matchup. I got the Saints here. I think the Suns, this is one of those when you get that marquee win that everybody talks about, you usually have a letdown in the next game. So I'm going to go with the Saints this one. Mason Woods injury, I think, does affect him. I just I'm gonna tip Ross from that now until I'm given a reason not to. So I'm gonna tip the Saints in this one.
Think it'll be closer than a lot of people expect. I
I
actually
agree.
reckon that the Saints could maybe do what North did to Hawthorn last week and kind of think, oh, yeah, we got this one in the bag and move on. I'll actually be there on Saturday night. I'm also going to tip the Saints because they haven't given us a reason to tip against them at the moment. But yeah, I reckon it'll be entertaining. I give the Suns a chance, though. I actually genuinely reckon they could get that their chance to get up, but I'll stick
Mhm.
with the Saints for now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this if Stewie Doo can give them to get them to go off the chip on their shoulder like they did against Geelong, I think they're in this. I completely agree with you. I I, I just it's hard to back the not to back the mojo of the St. Kilda Saints. So we jump to it. The fun one for me, Sydney Cricket Ground, St. Kilda versus Port Adelaide. This is kind of one of those that is always this is another bogey team for the Swans. Port Adelaide and Gold Coast tend to be the two teams that Sydney just have trouble beating. I almost tipped Port in my tipping competition just because I thought let's try the reverse because I tipped Sydney last week and it bombed in my face. I'm gonna tip Sydney. I think they bounce back. Port, for some weird reason, there's just something off about this team. I don't know what it is. I think traveling after a tough loss against Adelaide, I think is difficult. So I'm going to tip Sydney in this one, not Red Hat Donnie, Coach Hat Donnie tipping this one. Sydney in this one, but again, Port's going to keep this close. They're a tough side. They're not just going to roll over.
No, I agree with you. I think Sydney will win, and I think they'll actually have quite a decent win. So I'll back your coach Donny tip, and I'll also go the Swans, and I think they'll make it good as well. I reckon 4 or 5 goals at least.
Awesome, awesome. We jumped to Marvel Stadium. Essendon Bombers versus GWS Giants. Who do you like in this one?
Interesting game this one actually. I reckon
It
I don't
is.
know. I don't. I'm. Yeah. I don't know. I almost yeah. I'd go Essendon. I'll go Essendon. But I think this could play out very similarly to the Swans and the Saints. I think that I would not write GWS off. I
Mhm.
really think they're in with a big chance. I think they'll have something to prove. And I think Essendon will want to bounce back like against like they did against the Saints late in that game. But yeah, I'll tip the Bombers, but I'm not convinced by half of my tips, to be honest. This is why I don't do it. Um,
Mhm. No, hey,
but yeah,
t-
we'll go with the Bombers.
the way tipping has been this year, you are not the only one that's going. So, no, I agree with you. I think Essendon win this one. I think they've the side as a whole is much more cohesive. I think GBS again, Kingsley is making a changes. And I almost think there's a little bit of that hangover of that first game against Adelaide. They put so much in that heat that I still think they're kind of recovering mentally, not physically, but mentally from how tough that game was. I think Essendon just too strong, fast stack at Marvel. They play it really well. I think they win it. I agree with you. I think GWS is in it till the fourth quarter. I think it'll be fascinating. We jump all the way out, make the flight out to the West Coast as the West Coast Eagles with all of their injury trouble and they get Melbourne. Oh, oh boy. I think Melbourne win this one. I think Melbourne win it big. As much as the West Coast is great at home, if all of those injuries that I saw are all out, this is going to be darn near a waffle side playing Melbourne. And if Melbourne is up and about, this could be a huge percentage booster for the D's. I got the D's in this one. I think it's big, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the only tip I've got confident this week. I've got no hesitation tipping the D's. That's the only time I'll do that all round. So yeah, definitely agree with you there. It's
All right.
hard to see West Coast coming close to the D's with a full strength side at the moment, let alone with what's going on with their injury list. So no, I'm comfortably go the D's.
All right. And the Easter Monday matchup sees Geelong at the MCG face Hawthorn. I won't even lie with you, Marnie. For about 10 seconds, I seriously thought about tipping Hawthorn in this game. I seriously thought about it. I'm going to tip the Cats in this one, but I did. My finger hovered over the Hawthorn for the tipping competition that I'm in. So I tipped Geelong. I think Hawthorn's in it, but I think Geelong gets that bounce back win. They get the perfect opponent at the right time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is Geelong's moment now. If they're serious, and they are serious, they might not be, but I think they are serious. Then I think they'll win this one. They've got to. They actually have no choice. Easter Monday, it's one of the biggest games of the year. They've got to come out and win. I think they will. I think they'll win.
If Hawthorn wins this game, then I think they grab the tiny hammer and bust the panic button because that would be an absolute travesty and
Oh,
countdown.
absolutely.
If they lose this one, people in Geelong are going to pull their hair out because it would be absolutely out of nowhere. So Marnie, thank you so much. That is going to do it for our episode. It's been fantastic chatting with you. I know you had to relocate throughout your house. Sometimes Wi-Fi can do that to you, unfortunately. So I genuinely appreciate you hopping on. So this has been an absolute blast.
No, thanks, Johnny. I always love having a chat, all things footy with you. And yeah, hopefully I will do it again soon.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I will definitely reach back out. We got a long season to go. And we will definitely be in contact again. It's been fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our AFLW AFL round review, round 3, round 4 coming up, and keep an eye out. VFL review is coming very, very soon. Is my first sit down with my VFL reporter to talk some VFL results, waffle as well, and another review of some Sandful action. So keep an eye out, and we will see you again very, very soon for another episode of Donnie's Disposal.
Here's the song.